You know all those labels society loves to slap on us? Well, today, we're peeling them back. We're going to dive into the hidden psychology behind behaviors that get a bad rap, and you'll see that what often looks like a flaw is actually a sign of a much deeper, more complex mind.
So, have you ever felt like you're just operating on a totally different frequency? Like the unwritten rules everyone else seems to get just don't quite click for you? If you've ever felt that way, you're definitely not alone, and it probably doesn't mean something's wrong with you.
Let's be real. We've all heard them. Labels like antisocial, insecure, or just plain weird. But psychology shows us that behind those easy labels, there's usually a fascinating truth at play. These aren't character flaws. They're more like the unique operating instructions for a mind that's just wired a little differently. Today, we're going to decode those instructions.
All right, first up, let's dive into the social world. Because let's face it, that's where most of these misunderstandings happen. We're going to tackle 3 really common myths about social behavior and uncover the psychological strength that's hiding just beneath the surface. Okay, so here's a big one. If you have just a few friends, people automatically assume you must be lonely, right? But psychology suggests something else is going on. For a lot of people, it's not that they can't make friends. It's a very conscious choice to skip the surface-level stuff. They're not after quantity. They're looking for a real, genuine connection. And honestly, they'd rather be alone than force a friendship that just feels empty. In a world that is absolutely obsessed with being seen, choosing not to put your whole life online often gets written off as insecurity or shyness. But a lot of the time, the exact opposite is true. This choice can actually be a sign of some serious self-assurance, a kind of confidence that doesn't need likes or comments to feel real. It comes from the inside, not from a screen.
And this all comes down to a really cool psychological concept, an internal locus of control. It's basically a deep-down belief that you are in the driver's seat of your life, not the shifting opinions of others. People with this trait don't need external validation to know their worth. Their sense of self is solid, whether anyone's watching or not.
All right, what about hating crowds? It's the classic sign of being antisocial, isn't it? Well, not so fast. For so many people, this has nothing to do with avoiding people. It's about avoiding total sensory chaos. Think about it. In a crowd, your brain is getting bombarded with thousands of inputs all at once. Sights, sounds, smells, movements. For some minds, that is just way too much data. And getting out of there is a pretty smart act of self-preservation. This brings us to a trait called high sensory processing sensitivity. If you have this, your brain is kind of like a super sensitive microphone in a loud room. It picks up everything. So where other people just hear background chatter, you hear 10 different conversations, footsteps, the buzz of the lights. You get the idea. Avoiding crowds isn't a social failing, it's just your brain's logical way of protecting its own energy. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about intelligence. We have this idea that a high IQ makes life a cakewalk, but the reality that psychology shows us is, well, it's a lot more complicated than that.
We've all seen it in movies, right? The genius who just effortlessly solves complex problems and wins every argument. But in real life, that's rarely how it goes. High intelligence doesn't get rid of life's struggles, it just gives them a different shape.
In fact, sometimes it can look like the total opposite of success. It can feel like this quiet frustration, a sense of being disconnected from everyone, or being completely overwhelmed in your own head, even when your life looks perfect on the outside. It's this hidden, internal battle that so many of the brightest people face every single day. And these struggles are surprisingly common. A high IQ brain is basically built for constant analysis, which, naturally, leads to chronic overthinking. It sees patterns others miss, which leads to questioning rules and authority. It processes things so fast that boring, repetitive tasks can feel like actual torture. And because it's always thinking in more layers, it often leads to this profound feeling of being out of sync and just deeply misunderstood.
And it all boils down to this one powerful paradox. That incredible mind, the one that's capable of so much insight and creativity, is the very same mind that can create exhaustion, isolation, and a ton of self-doubt. It's a constant balancing act between a gift and a burden. So if even something like intelligence can feel like a struggle, what about the traits we're all taught are just straight-up weaknesses?
In this next section, we're going to flip the script on two common behaviors that get judged pretty harshly, but are actually rooted in some serious psychological strength.
First up, crying. In our culture, this is pretty much seen as the ultimate sign of weakness, right? A total loss of control. But what if that's completely backwards?
Psychology tells us that people who cry easily aren't fragile. They're emotionally honest. Their brains might just be wired to feel things more intensely, more quickly. Tears aren't a breakdown, they're a release valve. It's a healthy, biological way to process heavy emotions instead of bottling them up. It's a sign that your nervous system is alive and responding to the world.
Okay, next, let's talk about that person who always needs quiet time, who craves silence. It's so easy to label that as being avoidant or antisocial. But what's actually going on in the brain during those moments of peace and quiet? For a lot of people, especially deep thinkers, silence isn't empty space. It's fuel. It's the environment their brain needs to switch from just reacting to the world to actually processing it, connecting ideas, solving problems, and recharging its batteries. They aren't running away from the world. They're just diving deeper into their own. Okay, so we've decoded some social rules, we've redefined intelligence, and we've reframed weakness. Now let's bring it all home and talk about what this all means for you and how you see your own incredible mind. Listen, if any of this has been hitting a little too close to home, I really want this next idea to sink in. That feeling of being out of sync, the mental burnout, the sensitivity to everything around you, these are not signs that you are broken. They are not mistakes that you need to fix. Instead, think of them this way. They are the cost of depth. A powerful mind doesn't just make you smarter, it can intensify everything. Your awareness, your emotions, your sense of responsibility. The very things that cause you to struggle are the exact same things that give you the capacity for incredible insight, empathy, and understanding.
So please, stop thinking of your mind as being wired incorrectly. Maybe it's just wired for more. More depth, more awareness, more truth. It's like a high-performance engine. It might need a different kind of fuel and maintenance, but it's built for a journey that most people can't even imagine.
And that leaves us with one last thought. We spend so much of our lives trying to change ourselves to fit into the world. But what if the real journey is about finally understanding how you're wired and then building a life that actually honors that? Because once you stop fighting your own mind, you can finally start using it to its absolute fullest potential.